Alrighty, folks, and welcome to the Tuesday coffee chat with John Willis, Jack Spirko, and Nicole Sauce. It's great to be here today. We decided to move the show by 1 week because Jack Spirko decided to take time off.
I did.
Now, John and I were live last Tuesday on Independence Day, but Jack was not live. Anyway.
No, Jack did absolutely nothing. And to quote a great movie, it was everything I dreamed it could be.
Anyway, we got a lot to talk about today that we can just shoot the shit about. But if you want to ask us questions, put your questions, first couple words in all caps. I will star them, or Jack will star them, or we'll have a star fight like we usually have. Star fight! And we'll bring those into the show. The thing that's on my mind today, guys, is economic crash.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So it went out yesterday or last week, and I edited. I had somebody helping me with social posts last week, and it went out that Nicole Sauce does not believe there will be an economic crash. And I was like, we need to change that because Nicole Sauce believes we are in the middle of an economic crash right now. So let's talk about that. Like, what is economic crash, and what does it look like, and what does it mean for people? Either one of you can go.
Well, you're right. You're in the middle of it. I just did, ironically, an episode where I talked about it this way, and I said it's like the sci-fi thing where the ship is stuck in the event horizon of the black hole, and it's already being spaghettified into the hole, but nobody on the ship can see it because it actually happens in very slow motion. And I think when people talk about economic crash, if you're familiar with the book by James Leslie Rawls, Patriots, The Coming Collapse, they all see it that way. Like, everything will be hunky-dory one day, and then just complete total, like, apocalyptic shit the next. And that's just not how economic collapse has happened if you look at civilizations throughout history. If you look at the Roman collapse, it took 300 friggin' years to come to full fruition. I don't think we got 300 friggin' years. But we're dead in the middle of it. I put up a graph. I'll see if I can find it while John's talking or you're talking next. But it shows the effect of cumulative inflation that we've had since 1913 and specifically since 71. And some financial advisor who I would never let near my money, by the way, like crapped all over that graph. Like, you shouldn't make it that way. I didn't make it. It's not for me. Because when you look at inflation, you have to look at it both cumulative and compounded. And what I mean by that is if inflation is 8% last year and 4% this year, well, you add those two together, you get 12%. But the 4 went on top of the 8 that was already there. So it's really like 12.3%. And when you do that shit over 40 years, it starts to really add up. And I'll try to find that graph because I think it kind of makes an impact of where we're at. And one of y'all can say something.
Well, they're not including fuel, lodging, or food in any of those numbers either. And it's just like their new unemployment numbers. Well, 90 days ago, all those people fell off. They're not eligible. Those are the new numbers they're showing you. I think the more important question is, what are you going to do about the economic collapse, right? What are you going to do? I mean, we can sit and dwell on it and quarterback it and talk about it and argue with, dipshits on the internet, whether it's real or not. But what are you going to do about it? If you look at my incoming customer numbers, it's a lot more work to maintain the level of sales that I'm looking for every single day. I don't know that it's a lot more work, but we're dancing around, right? We're not running 120 pieces of something. We're running 24 pieces. So there's urgency. And we have a ton of new customers coming through, first-time customers buying like weird stuff. So, and we just communicate with them, what do you want to see next? Or we'll put up a post for a day pack and guys will comment. I'm like, well, what color do you want? So we'll do small runs of those. So we're catching them still. There's the graph right there.
Mm-hmm.
How do you like that? And you see the dramatic turn. Like, there is significant inflation past the 30s with the rebasing of the dollar against gold, but it's still held relatively in check. And we can always attribute some of the inflation to simple supply and demand and stuff like that. Like, there is two parts to it. But, gee, what the happened in 1971? And notice that line is dramatically consistent. Like, inflation's good during Reagan and bad during Carter, but when you look at it across the total, it's all garbage. And people that look at that graph and complain about it for one reason or another, they never complain about the graph that's the same graph in reverse. The one with the dollar that shows the value of the dollar in 1913 and the dollar goes down as the graph. It's the same graph. It's just presented a different way. That's how much inflation there's been in the last 40 years. And we do have a reality that at some point you hit a kind of a terminal point. And I don't know exactly when it is, but it is coming. And John's right. It's more important, what do we do about it, than the fact that it's there. Because anybody denying it right now, you're screwed. I can't help you. Like, if you don't think you're looking at an economic collapse, if you think you're just looking at a cycle right now, then, John will say it like, you don't qualify for my time. Well, I kind of feel that way. Like, we can talk about what to do about it, but if you're going to debate whether it's here or not, then you're not ready to understand what to do about it.
Well, broke people won't feel it as affected, right? The dude buying $5 at the gas pump, but buying $40 of cigarettes.
Yeah.
Like, going through the past, hard times and stuff, like the collapse of the housing market and stuff like that in 2008 and prior. I didn't feel that because I was fucking broke all the time, right? I was just working and it didn't affect me. I mean, maybe it did, but anybody saying that it's not happening right now, what does your grocery bill look like? But a lot of people that we bump into in arm's reach out when you're out in society, out in public, they don't go grocery shopping. They go to a window and get food every day and pay. It doesn't hit them because their dollar menu burger is now $2. They talk about it and grumble. But when you go to the grocery store and buy $350 of groceries last year, and it's now $550, and the footprint of the groceries is smaller, it really amplifies. And when we say 1971, up until 1971, if you had dollars in your bank account, they gained a little bit of pennies every year. And then after 71, they subtract pennies every year.
Yeah. So even though they're giving you like 4.5% now on your checking account, you're still losing value.
Yeah. And that's the common denominator there is the final. We finally came off what little was left of the gold standard, there, along with some other things. But in 1971, that's where it happened. A single man could go to work and support his family and 2.5 kids, and the wife could stay home and raise the children. And that all changed. All of that, it all disappeared right there. There were several other things that happened.
And then what the game became, let's just keep kicking the can. That's the game. We'll just kick the can and we'll let the next generation deal with it. Well, you can only kick that can so far, because you brought up a really good point about people like buying all their food from fast food and stuff like that. So the thing that happens there is they don't see what's going on the back end. Somebody else is making the decision of how to reduce the cost of the meal that you're eating. So the person that goes to the grocery store and primarily lives off food that they buy and then cook, they feel it because they have to make that determination. They know that they went from really good quality ground chuck to the giant tube of pink spooge that they call ground beef. They know they made that choice because they put all kinds of flavorings and sugar and shit on it when you're eating a McDonald's or a Burger King burger. You don't know that they've reduced their quality, or you're not really aware of it. And because you're buying it piecemeal, you're paying for it daily, you don't feel it like when you go buy 2 weeks or 4 weeks worth of shit at the same time. And that's just food. That's just food. Like, they've done all kinds of ways to trick you into believing your cost of living hasn't gone up that much. So when I was buying my first car, a standard car loan or lease, 36 months for a lease, and that's still pretty standard, but 48 months for a purchase. And I ain't that old. We're all the same age, basically, right? And then it became 60 months. And now people are buying cars on 72 months or even like 80-month terms. They're financing cars 6-7 years. This is insanity that you would finance a depreciating asset at 6 or 7 years. But it makes the payment lower. But it doesn't make the cost lower. The cost is actually higher. And so there's a lot of ways that marketing and packaging have been used to create an illusion that the inflation isn't bad as it is. And that part's not really government or central bank. That part is, I sell fucking cars, and if I don't sell cars, I have to lay off all these friggin' people and close my dealership. How the hell can I get people to still buy the car? That's how that, and then even if there's a demand, how do I get it to where this person that comes in front of me and says, well, I want to buy a car, can get a loan? right? That adjustment is also something that's hidden from most people because they don't pay attention. And we can sound like we're really beating up on fucking people at times. And part of this is because the guy like my son, who's 32 years old with 2 kids, that's busting his ass every day and has a few things go wrong, he doesn't have time to look at that shit, right? Because that system is designed to keep him in that mode. And like, you have to willingly and consciously want to break out of that gerbil wheel. And most people, it's too uncomfortable. I don't think they can't. I think it's too uncomfortable. And that's why they look at people that live their own life their own way and say, you're lucky, right? That's why they say that. Because if they acknowledged it was work, then they would have to acknowledge that, well, if I did that shit, then I could have that shit too. But they don't want to do it.
I do think the perspective makes a big difference on what's happening with the economy right now, where if you look at the big picture of this decision you're making in your life, and make the right decision, you do set yourself up to weather the quote unquote storm, even if you're near the edge of your budget. And that goes back to looking at the total cost of things. You know, airlines, the way they're making money right now is they're selling flights cheap, and then you add $50 for a bag, and then you add $50 for a carry-on bag, and then you upgrade to $15 for a better seat. Yeah. And it's those little add-ons that where they're making the money, and your total cost will end up $800 for your ticket or something, or $600.
Yeah.
But you bought a $200 ticket or a $300 ticket.
Yeah.
When you're willing to do those little add-ons as you go, and you find yourself doing that, that's a really good time if you want to get out of that mindset to say, wait, step back. When I made this decision to buy this thing, I spent $300 for a reason. Was that is it now the right decision to up that to $500 or not? And what am I going to do with that extra couple $100 or whatever that is? Now, that's a small example. You can do that on larger scale. I look at my house here that I paid $76,000 for, right?
Yeah.
No, I financed this. I think it's a $250,000, $76,000 house.
Yes. And the lifetime value of the loan, right?
I love my house. I'm not moving out of my house. My mortgage is almost completely paid off right now, but what would have happened if I would have spent 10 years saving and paid cash? What would have been different then?
You would have paid so much more for the house. You probably would have ended up behind. Like, I look at it this way. Now, things have changed.
Yeah.
When I bought this house 10 years ago, and I got an interest rate of like 2.9%. I felt that if I couldn't make better than 2.9% on the money that I retained as capital, that I didn't deserve the money. Like, I don't know how you can fail to get at least a 2.9% return on your capital. So I didn't want to tie my capital up in the home. I wanted my capital free to earn me more money than I would ever pay the bank at that 2.9%. And if you are creative when you buy, I won't go through the whole story again, but I got this place, like, even at the time, stupid cheap. So I'm paying for my house right now, 3 acres, 2,500 square feet, 2 shop buildings, fenced and cross-fenced, less than my son is paying for a 1,300 square foot house that he really didn't overpay for. He just had a little bit higher interest rate, and it wasn't actually that much less than my house was because it was 6 years later. And so buying a house is an investment in your future if you do it right, because my cost of housing right now is stupid low compared to what somebody else would pay for this if they moved in today. And that's part of working that formula and understanding that not all debt is bad. Debt on depreciating assets, bad, unless it's a short-term hold and you're using it for a flip or something. You have a reason you're doing it. But debt on cars in general is bad because a car goes down in value while your cost goes up across time. A house, if you take care of it and you buy smart, it goes up in value over time. Even when you have recessions, the long-term trajectory of property is pretty consistent. But then you got to service not only the debt, the tax, right? There's so many ways that you get eaten. And you have to understand the system is designed to eat away at you. It's designed to keep you as a stressed little rat in a wheel, always running, and afraid if you stop moving the wheel, that everything will fall apart. And so you have to get out of the wheel. But again, most people are afraid to get out of the wheel.
There's way less inventory too. If you go to we were at the Toyota dealership, I don't know, a few weeks ago to have just service done on the trucks. They had 2 Toyota trucks. There's a bunch of used Jeeps. There's some Dodge trucks. There's a bunch of stuff. But this is a premier Toyota dealership.
Yeah.
that on any day would have hundreds of vehicles in inventory, brand new vehicles, high-end vehicles. They don't have shit there. And the 2 trucks they have been on the lot for at least over a year. It's nothing that I look at and go, man, I would like to have that. Like, we're not even looking at new vehicles right now or trading in. We're just holding the stuff we have.
And I mean, it's better than it was at the worst, but we have the biggest one in Fort Worth. And about a year ago, I took a picture when I went by to have service done on one of my vehicles, and it looked like it was closed.
Yeah.
Right. But the showroom was full of people. The parking lot was empty, and the showroom was full of people buying the vehicle 6 to 8 weeks before they would get there.
Yeah, something they can't test drive. Amanda was just at Walmart to pick up I needed some extension cords. They don't have them. All they have is light duty stuff. It's happening everywhere. Yeah. I saw somebody in the comments saying that they go to a burger place, pretty nice place, and the meat tastes different.
Oh,
and I agree with that. We go to if we're eating someplace, it's usually something pretty high end if we're going out to eat. And the meat is very different. You'll order the same cut. It costs considerably more. And something is just not right with, I don't know if, I really believe it's how they're growing the meat, wherever it's coming from now.
Yeah.
But even at, you sit down for $100 meal and it's not the same thing.
No.
So I avoid ground meat now when out and about, because I've been traveling a lot, because I think they're putting soy filler in it based on my body's reaction to it, or other fillers. And it's just like, you can't trust it unless you know.
I think they're putting something else in it. And these are steaks.
Yeah. I haven't had a steak in a while. I know Janet said our grocery store had a lot of empty shelves again yesterday. I've had somebody who listens to my podcast chronicling since about early 2021, the weekly shopping report, and just reporting prices, state of the shelves. It's really interesting to watch that story over time.
Yeah, we were just in a Tractor Supply in Jackson, Tennessee, and there are bare spots everywhere. We were in another store, a big store. I don't remember what it was. And they have removed aisles. And I've noticed that the aisles, the shelving is much deeper now. So they've moved the footprint out. It looks like they've probably taken 4 or 5 aisles out and put in deeper shelving to kind of look like your spacing is similar as you walk down the aisles. And there's just stuff missing, like it was Lowe's. We were at Lowe's, and that's where this was. We were looking for bug zappers, and we couldn't find. We went to 3 stores and found 1 bug zapper, like in the entire, which is like, I don't know. I don't buy bug zappers very often, but I do recall seeing them. Things are definitely missing. Yeah.
I mean, part of it is all the supply shortage stuff that's still unwinding. Part of it is also retailers are making, because of the same shit we're talking about, more critical decisions about what they actually put in inventory. It's not whether or not they can get a bug zapper. What's my margin on a bug zapper? How many bug zappers do I sell a year? And can I compete with Amazon selling bug zappers? Yeah. And they're making that decision the same way that you would make a decision. Like if you made some gear and you thought it was the greatest fucking thing ever, John, and you put that shit out and you did all your viral videos and shit and nobody fucking bought it, or you sold like 10 of them a month, you'd be like, well, we're not making this shit because it's not moving. So, how well do bug zappers move by midsummer? Probably not as well as they do in like April. So it's part of that. But on the whole thing with the meat, like this is actually a really interesting topic because I finally, because John's always poked me about it, decided to stick my toe into TikTok and maybe some content there and shit. And so I started following like all the people in the keto carnivore meat space because that's my jam on short content. I like that. Gives me ideas. I found this dude who calls himself Meat Dad. And 90% of this dude's content is he goes to a grocery store, videos like, here's how much New York strips are, here's how much ribeyes are, whatever. And then he goes and gets a big fucking like semi-primal, not a full primal, but like what you get like a chuck roll. And he breaks it down. And his videos are all like 2 minutes. And this guy was a butcher for like 25 years, so he knows his shit. And what he'll show is like, okay, this is what I just spent $34 on. And it's this giant pile of meat. He's like, buy a grinder, grind your own meat, whatever. And so even if you're buying factory meat, which, I mean, all of us would say, if you can get grass-fed, whatever, do that instead. But what a simple thing to save money. Now, here's the thing that this kind of leads to, though. Every time I see him do a video and show people how to pull 2 big fat chuck eyes out of a chuck roll, I'm like, fucking stop telling people how to do this. because as everybody starts doing it, the price of the underlying item starts going up. Because what you can do right now, you go in, you don't see a big cut like that. Most of the time, you go to the meat counter. Now, fuck Whole Foods, they won't do it for you. But most grocery stores, if you're like, hey, I know you have chuck roast on sale right now. Do you have a full chuck roll back there? They'll bring it out and they'll sell it for less than the price of the chuck roast. And now you can do the kind of thing he's talking about. But this is what we've been doing for 40 years. How do we squeeze more out of less? And I feel like we're kind of at it. Like, this is why I think we're going to start accelerating down the other side of the bell curve here. We're running out of ways to do that. Like, how many ways are there left to do things like this? I used to live on $20 a week in food when I was young and broke.
Same.
You know, I would buy one whole chicken, some ramen noodles, some stovetop stuffing, you know, and then if I needed to, I would tap like the 69-cent menu at Taco Bell somewhere in the middle of that. I don't advise anybody live that way, but it was doable. You can't do that shit now.
No, that's hundreds of, like, I went to the grocery. I don't go to the grocery store very much anymore because I really kicked up food production here. But I went to the grocery store to buy some things for a 12-hour drive I was taking. I walked out $80 later thinking, you know, there was a time when all of my food for the week was $20 to $25. And that includes toilet paper and laundry detergent. It's not just the food. And that was in the 90s.
Yeah.
And now that would be $400. I mean, I was living large. I was eating great. I cooked from scratch. And that is, you know, when people ask, so I've got an interesting comment here. I think that getting out of the wheel is most people struggle. They want to, but don't know where to start. In y'all's opinion, where should you start? If you can logically add cooking from scratch or things of that nature to reduce your output, you don't have to earn your money plus the taxes you pay on that money to buy the things. Yeah. At the same time, you need to be working on the other side of that equation, which is more money coming in more ways. So I think part of it, I mean, it is all mindset, but then you need to be willing to take action, whatever that action looks like for you. And you know, it's hard for me to say to you how you start. You have to decide to start, and then you'll figure it out every day. Ask yourself, how am I going to opt out of this wheel? What am I doing to make my life better? Because as you add skills and resilience, you end up in a place where you're feeling more secure and you make better decisions. And John would say, just make more money.
Yeah.
Well, John,
when you have lots of money, it's a lot easier to weather crap.
That's bullshit because I don't have a lot of money, and I fucking have had less money than every fucking person in this audience when I fucking did what I tell you to do. But what I will tell you is, if you don't make the decision, somebody's going to make it for you.
Correct.
And there's a ton of jobs going away, and there are a ton of people looking for work. And if you're that dude that just shows up and kind of gets by because you're able to, those days are going away because there are people pounding doors down looking for work that are fucking hungry. And if you're acting like you're not hungry, somebody will make that decision for you. So you might want to make it on your own to start out.
I'll tell you right now, if you send me an email telling me you can't do the stuff that I recommend because you're too broke, and I email you back and I say, are you doing something like DoorDash or Uber Eats or something like that, or something similar, and you say no, my next email is going to be, then shut up and go do that. I can't even help you until you're hustling to your maximum. Well, I have a full-time job. Hey, when I was 20 and I had a full-time job, I worked about 80 hours a week because I had another like contracting gig. Yeah. Because I knew that was the time when my body could tolerate the workload out in the heat. And I was in trade labor back then. It wasn't easy. But it was worth it to build a foundation, you know, until I figured out what I wanted to do when I grew up. Like, when you're in your 20s, you should be working 18 hours a day. I mean, I know there's some people that would just balk at that, but that's the time that you not just should be doing it, but you can. And if you're doing that, you're going to get this natural diversity of experience in addition to the income. And it will help you figure out so that when you're 30, you're on your feet hard and making something happen and making decisions about the rest of your life. Where today, most people call becoming 30, finally getting out of college, growing up. You should be grown up the day that you hit 18. I mean, that's the number we've put on it as a society. You're a grown-ass man or woman at 18. You can enter into contracts, right, without your mommy and daddy's permission. That's the day you should grow up. And if we're raising kids right, they should be grown up before they get there.
Yeah, I mean,
that's kind of like where you pull off, like, okay, now you can go, right? But you should have your 17-year-old should already be ready already. Just it should only be a legal framework holding them back.
When I talk to most of the people that I'm in close contact with, that I look at as being successful people we do business with and such, they often have a common theme that they left high school, left home. Like my video guy, Brandel, the guy that shoots all of our crazy video stuff, that dude left home at 14, like walked out the door and never came back. Like that kind they all have that story. Like I'm not saying leave high school, but that's a common thing. Like I dropped out of high school. I didn't finish the 10th grade. And like the first shop we got, I slept on the floor for 90 days probably on 2 isomats and some cardboard boxes until I found a dirty ass mattress in the alley. And I slept on that for another 6 months. And there's shit to do. We were just talking to somebody, I think they're probably 22, 23. And she was saying, she just had a child. And she was saying, my husband, boyfriend, we need more money. What can I do for more money? And Amanda said, you could go to the thrift stores, buy stuff, put it on Poshmark, put it on eBay, and just start flipping things, find things, and then upgrade and keep doing that. And her boyfriend has a job. And I said, well, what about Grubhub? What about Uber? What about Lyft? You can have all these apps on and just take the one that pops up first in your area. And she said, well, he's doing that. He's working 6 hours a week and he doesn't think he can work more than 6 hours a week. Well, there's your fucking problem. That is, we have calibrated people so low. Most people having these conversations that you come in contact with, they've never had calluses on their hands. They can't work with their hands. And the make-believe jobs, and I know people are going to lose their shit when I say this, the IT jobs and those make-believe jobs where you don't actually produce something that somebody's going to seek you out for when times get tough, do they stop spending money on that stuff, right? And like those guys, they're about to be fucking shocked when they have to go get a manual job of some sort. What's that thing that you work 40 to 60, 80 hours a week for, and after you pay everything you have to pay, you take that little bit of money to go do that thing that you love doing? That's what you have to figure out how to do. That thing, how do you build and produce that? And will people seek you out for it? I say all the time, like, I would never go to the DMV if dudes with guns didn't make me go to the DMV and pay those fines and taxes. But if my tooth hurts, I'll pay whatever that dentist wants on Sunday to fix my tooth. Be that person.
Oh, that example hits me right here, John. It hits me right here.
because wouldn't you?
It's true.
And when people say, "Oh, I can't find that money," really? Let me cut your hand off and see if you can find the money to have that bitch put back on. Because I guarantee you can. You are just calibrated. Your threshold's not there. You have no tolerance. And if you think, like, people they confuse the word hurt with injured. Hurt, no, that's just difficult. It's hot. Yeah. It's uncomfortable. Yeah. That's not hurt. That's not injured.
Yeah. And I think you do have to balance the whole idea of working both sides of the balance sheet and understanding having a wealth mindset. Because if you just listen to the surface of what we're saying here, it just sounds like get out and work your ass off.
Yeah.
But to an end, right? If you're going to go out and you're going to hustle, like Uber Eats is not a career. No. It's a hustle to put capital into your hand. And if you're going out and hustling, great. But if then you're partying all weekend and by the end of the weekend, all the hustle money is gone, you would have actually been better off not hustling in that scenario, right? Like you need to be building something for the future. And it's as much about how you think as what you do. And so my view is flat out hustle, bust your ass, sweat, blood and tears, whatever it takes to make as much money as you can while you're young. But the entire time, if you don't know where it's going, be searching continuously. What can I come up with? What can I do? When back in the 90s, I was knocking down an easy double six-figure salary, right? I had it made as far as people were concerned. And I was building all these websites and learning all about this stuff about marketing while I was in sales, traveling and working probably 70 to 80 hours a week on that. And I would get done with my bullshit I had to do to keep the mothership happy in my hotel. And I would be building a website about telecommunications, right, at night at the hotel because I knew I didn't want to do what I was doing now for the rest of my life. And at that point, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know I wanted to be a podcaster. There were no podcasts. It didn't exist, right? So, but you're developing the knowledge and the skill set, and you're making the maximum effective use of the time that you have so that you can find your thing eventually. and you find where money and demand equals, meets passion, that Venn diagram, and then, you're off. And it may not look anything like what I'm doing or Nicole's doing or John's doing. In fact, the three of us have some similarities, but we all have some dramatic differences in what we do. I don't sell product. Both of y'all sell product, right? My business is my podcast. Nicole's podcast is a marketing arm of her business, right? Like, so we have different ways we've done this. John sells badass freaking, tactical gear.
And t-shirts.
Right? We all have different ways we do this. And the person that's listening to this, that follows this advice, may come up with something that doesn't look anything like, doesn't even have any similarities between us, except solid business model and heavy work ethic. Like, I think like the biggest deficit in this country right now is probably, number one is moral compass. But number two, that's highly related, is a good work ethic. The work ethic of this country right now as a total sucks. It sucks ass. And you see it everywhere. I talked to a guy that they take care of our pool. He's like, if you came to me right now and you were 22 years old and you'd work, I'd give you $45,000 a year salary as a repair tech, because you don't know what the fuck you're doing. And in 3 to 4 months, you could be making $80,000 to $100,000. Because once you're good, I have to pay you or you'll leave.
Yeah.
I'm like, how many people want that job? He's like, no one.
So
the owner out in the field doing the work himself, because he just can't hire somebody. He can't give the money away.
Yeah. One of my show sponsors is an electrician who, when I explain what he does, what I'm saying is he does really high quality work and he won't let crap pass. Like, he makes sure it's done right. He shows up when he says he's going to, or he tells you that he needs to reschedule because something went longer. He stays until he gets the job done. That should be normal, but it's not. And he is booked out like 3 months right now because of that. Like, great guy, but that's the work ethic that's missing that used to be normal. Aaron says, we sold our home and moved into an RV. They have 3 kids. They move every 13 weeks and homeschool. We were struggling on one income to save $400 a month before we did that. We now save $4,000 a month and have cash without having the cash flowing into the house. That's one way to do it, right? When you talk about opting out, how can I reduce my expenses as a family? They decided for them it was the RV life.
So, and that is a person that in 10 years will be a multimillionaire.
Yeah.
Assuming that they do anything, responsible with the savings that they have. As long as they don't just put it in the mattress, so to say, keep it all in cash. Like, you do anything with that to compound some return on it, and you're going to be a multimillionaire in 10 years. And then people will look at them and say, what? Well, it must be nice. Like, you're dead to me. If I can tell you're joking, I'll let it go. But if somebody seriously says, like, see somebody in a Maserati or some shit, says, much be nice, you are dead to me. You are out of my circle. I cannot be around you, because I do believe that you become more like the people you associate with. And I don't want any of that shit in me. Like, I can't go there. You're Eeyore, right?
Those never were your people. And at this point, you just say, you're right. It is nice.
It's very nice.
Like, we're not even in the same lane. We're not in the same game. We're not on the same interstate. If you ask what I do, I'll tell you what I did. If you ask how to do something, I'll tell you how I would do it. I don't care what anybody does until they tell me what they can't do. But I mean, we have so many good people. We don't have time to mess around with those guys. I mean, people show up all the time. I mean, look at the people just from the Survival Podcast that have started very highly successful businesses, and then they show up, and you're like, "Holy shit! Why am I not doing what this guy's doing?"
Yeah. Oh, I feel like that all the time. Like, man, I'm not. If my students, let's call it that, are so far ahead of me, then what am I doing? But then the other side of it, I'm like, if you're a good teacher, your students should go right past you.
Yeah.
Like, because that's if you're a teacher, your primary job should be to create students who are better than you. Right. And there's part of your problem, right? Because I don't see that happening in our education system at all. That's one of the reasons we homeschool our grandkids, because I want when I look, and I know I'm going to get people pissed, because I always do, because they're heroes that don't work capes and shit, teachers are, and whatever. But when I look at a lot of the public school teachers, I'm like, if my kids or my grandkids are not better than you, they're screwed. They're screwed. And since I don't believe you have the ability or even the freedom to make them better than you, I can't trust you with them. And so I don't just homeschool my grandkids because I don't want them in the woke ideology. I want them prepared for life. And I don't believe the current public education system is doing that. It's
not
preparing them to
designed
take a test, not to survive life.
It's not designed to.
No, it's not.
Why do all kids want it right now? The number one job they want is a content creator, right? Or
Social media.
Where did
that's
that come
easy,
from?
right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's so easy. You just
the babysitter.
Yeah.
And if you're young right now and you have the ability to work, right? Work, because you're not going to be young and very soon. Time, as you get older, time goes faster. And if you're young right now, I know that does not make sense to you. But if you have the ability to work right now, work your ass off. Work 18 hours a day. You don't have time for anything. Money accumulates. And when you're building something, especially when you're young, you might be doing whatever it is. Build content off of that, because once that content gets going, it will transition and become something different, and you won't have to do that other thing anymore. But all the guys that are like, I want to do wood cutting boards, but I can't afford a planer. Well, go do Uber, go pick up trash, do whatever, start building content. And then maybe you're not building cutting boards in 6 months. You're just building content, and companies are sending you all their woodworking tools to build content around. Yeah. Like it's when you start, it's a clock, and you're at 12 o'clock. And when you click 1 second, 2 miles down the road, it looks pretty much the same. But 10 miles down the road, you don't even see that second hand anymore. It can deviate and change. Yeah. Start building content. And if you're not even if you're not trying to monetize the content, it's advertising for whatever it is you're doing. And people will want to be involved. And when you start the new venture, you already have people that trust you and believe in you, and those are your customers. They will come on.
But you have to build a business model with it, right? Like, this is a problem. We got all these young people, they want to be influencers because they see some chick showing her butt on Instagram or whatever, and she seems like she's super rich. Well, she probably isn't. My niece-in-law is in that business. They do very, very well for themselves, and they don't go into the seedy side of it at all. But my nephew came out of a profession where he was responsible for P&L for a company and things like that. So when they were just playing with the whole thing, and it took off. So they came to me, and then we sat down together and put together a business model within that situation, right? And they're netting $400,000 or $500,000 a year off of that business. But so then a person looks at that, a young girl looks at that and says, well, I'll do the same thing. She can go out there and get 3 times the followers that my niece-in-law has, right? And not make any real money, or end up, selling herself out on OnlyFans or some shit like that. And it doesn't matter what niche you're in. That's just a common example, because it looks like it's easy. But there's people that are big time influencers in every niche out there. So do something you love, right? Do something you love, but then you have to it has to be going somewhere. What I see most people doing wrong in the world today for their lives is it's like they get in a car and take a road trip, but they don't know where they're going. They have no idea where they plan to go. And when you're 19 years old and you and your buddies get in a car and throw a cooler of beer in the back and you just take off, that's fine. But there's a point where you got to grow up. And now it's not just the weekend, it's your life. So whatever you're doing with it, you need to always be looking, where am I trying to get to? And not knowing is fine, as long as you're always asking the question. I mean, you should be asking yourself, until you really have a plan, 4 or 5 times a day, where am I trying to get to? Just stop. Set a reminder on your phone or some shit. And just when that thing goes off, ask yourself that question. The brain is so fucking powerful that if you ask it a question when you're, nodding off and taking a nap, it's still okay, the programmer gave me a command. I need to know where I'm going. And you will not. And if you do that long enough, you'll start finding answers. And when you find answers to where you want to be, then you can start making a map to get there. And you can start navigating instead of just fucking drifting. Because that's what the world does today. We just drift, and we want everything to be easy. And then we keep getting promises of shit like UBI and shit, universal basic income, and everything is just going to be fine. James Howard Kunstler wrote a book called Too Much Magic. He meant it in a different way, but it's really a great way to think about this. This idea that somebody will fix it later on for me, that is the last 3 generations. That sums up the mental mindset of the majority of people within them. And it's just got the number of people thinking that way has just grown across time.
So I read research, and I don't remember who it's by, but I would like to go back and find this out. 40 to 50 years after fairy tales where the heroes fix their own problems happen, our society tends to be more freedom oriented and individual responsibility is high. When you have the popular fairy tales have the fairy godmother popping in, 40 to 50 years later, people have the mindset that somebody needs to save me. That's how important it is when you have your kids to really be cognizant of what they're exposed to. I mean, I'm looking at Letty here, who homeschools her child, and it's hard for her sometimes, but she is in that position to expose her child to the kind, because we learn through story, the stories that teach you, like the Bobbsey twins, go out and fix your shit because you're the only one who can fix your shit ultimately. And
that's astute.
Yeah. That's something that really landed with me when I was in the Liberty movement. I was like, why are we messing around with trying to fight against public policy right now? We need fairy tales in front of kids where the kids fix their own problems. That's what we need.
Well, if you think about it, right? So our grandparents and our parents' generation, if they like some of the first TV shows and shit were shit like The Little Rascals, right? Where the kids were completely on their freaking own and nobody ever solved a problem for them. And the whole Disney generation, and there were some good things about old Disney. This is why it makes me sick how they've gone into the woke agenda and stuff like that. Because I remember like being a kid and Sunday nights was the wonderful world of Disney.
Yep.
And you would have never thought about not letting a kid in 1982 watch the wonderful world of Disney. Like on Sunday night, that was the thing you did before you went back to school the next day, and it's ruined. But you make a good point. And there has been this kind of shift in the storyline. I remember a lot of stories about kids where the kids did fix their own shit. But they became this dominant, and it's not just the fairy godmother stuff. It's where someone fixed it. Someone fixed it for them and they weren't on their own anymore. And now when we were kids after school, what did you do? Maybe you ran by the house and said, I'm home. And then you were gone. Right? We raised ourselves, right? Your parents weren't there and you were home. And if the freaking Atari 2600 didn't work, you started fucking with wires to get it to work, right? You didn't say mom or call tech support or shit. Atari didn't have tech support. We were on our own. You drank water out of a hose. You learned real quick, let the water run through the hose for a couple of minutes so it doesn't taste like hose anymore, right? I can't see the average 12-year-old being willing to drink out of a hose today, right? And I think you're onto something there. I don't know where you got the concept from, if it came from a place, but
it came from a place. I have to go back and find it because it's like the second time I've cited it in the last 2 years, and I should actually be able to cite the source of that. But here's what gives me hope, right? So 2010 to now, Harry Potter, Dresden series, those are people solving their own problems, which means in 2050 or 2060, the mindset is fix your shit.
So you're saying if we make 90, we'll see a better world?
Yeah.
But that's by design.
I think we have to accelerate this shit. I'm not betting my geriatric years on a generation that's here right now taking care of me. That's gonna suck.
But that's by design. That's the the whole Project Mockingbird thing. It's all programming. What is on television? I mean, who owns and controls all the media?
Well, and most boys are growing up with almost no male influence in their lives.
Yep.
Look at teachers as a whole, and I'm not picking on them now. I'm just demographics. Like the majority are female.
Yes.
And then let's talk about the fact that a whole shitload of male teachers are like effeminate wusses at this point. Like when I was in school, even if there were mostly women around, the male teachers were there. And if you started causing some shit, there was a foot in your ass hard. Like that's not the case anymore. Then the majority of households end in divorce. And then the dad is killing himself paying child support and barely able to see his kids. He only sees his kids on the weekends. And you know what you don't want to do when you only see your kid 2 days a week? Be a hard ass, right? That's the last thing you want to do because you're not there all the time. So you go into more of a grandfather mode in that situation, except you're not old enough to be a good grandfather. You don't have the wisdom yet. So these young men especially are growing up with the absence of that male role model. And that leads to one set of problems. That's the elephants thing where when we killed all the old elephants, the young elephants started freaking killing villagers and shit. And when they restored the patriarchs of the herds, then the old men took the young guys away, just like men do in human world, kick their ass a few times. So we don't do that because then they come kill us. So stop that shit. But then the females grow up and they grow up absent that model. They don't know what to look for in a long-term partner because no one modeled proper behavior for them. Then add in just the basic rebellious nature of kids. Like you want to rebel against the people older than you because you're clearly smarter than they are. They're in the past, they're stuck. Then add to it social media and the internet with a visibility into what other stupid kids are doing. And you throw all that together. I don't know how it's not worse when I look at it that way. It seems like it should be worse. Maybe that should give us hope.
Well, so human ingenuity gives us hope, right? Every time we face weird regulatory environments or runaway inflation, what we're doing is figuring out how to counteract that collectively. Like one person has a good idea, we learn about it. The great thing about the fact that we can connect digitally right now is you get ideas from people. And then you render, like every time we have an idea, it's rendering the system obsolete in one way or another.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why getting off the hamster wheel is so important because you're in the system, you're dependent on the system. To the degree you can peel off those dependencies, you're better and better and better in these situations.
You know, and not everybody's going to build something of their own, but there's still like the sacrifice reward ratio. So there's a whole group, you know, in the Bitcoin space, call themselves the plebs. And that's basically, I'm not an influencer, I'm nobody, I'm just a guy that stacks Bitcoin. And there's a lot of them I see on Nostr, especially since that's kicked up. And they refer to their job as fiat mining. They're mining fiat with their labor. And they're taking every bit of extra money they have and they're rolling into Bitcoin. That level of risk tolerance isn't there for everybody. But most of those guys are going to be looking pretty good in about 10 years. And you're going to tell them they're lucky. Right? I mean, and that's just one way to do it. They could be, you know, if you look at the S&P 500, all the ETFs tied to it, it's actually crap. It's garbage. There's 9 companies that make up the S&P 500 and make it look good. If you take those 9 companies out of the S&P 500, it doesn't even really keep up with inflation. So the person could be fiat mining and staying in the fiat system and investing in just those 9 companies or just the 6 of the 9 that are doing the best. That gives you a place to fall back to when one starts to perform poorly. There's a lot of ways to do this. The question is, are you doing everything that you can? Somebody asked, I saw on the sideline, I don't think we started because it wasn't in caps, like, but what about, you know, as your kids start to get older, you want to spend more time with them. Where do you make time for all this? Like, you have, everything's a choice. Everything's a decision. You know, we'd all be rich if we didn't have kids in some ways, you know, because you spend so much less money and you have more time to work. But the kids are an incredible reward, and I agree. All I can tell you is when I was working these crazy hours and shit, like not just my kid, but my wife, I put them on my freaking calendar as an appointment, right? And like you get home and you're tired. Doesn't matter. I have an appointment to play freaking tea party with my granddaughter. Okay, well then that's what if I had an appointment to meet with my boss, I would do it, right? I wouldn't be like, you know, dude, I mean, maybe some people would today, right? But like, you know, I wouldn't have when I was 25 years old. My manager and I had a meeting after hours at 6:30 at the office. Guess where my ass is going to be at 6:20? Standing outside his door to talk to him. Well, I just treat my family the same way. They're an appointment. They're locked in. There's a reminder an hour in advance. I'm not missing this time because it's as important as everything else. That's like the only advice I have there. Do you guys have any advice on that?
Yeah. So when we were working out of my mother's garage, my kids were there with me. My kids have been with me at the shop. My kids were there with me. Like we raised 5 kids, and our kids were with us all the time. If they weren't at school down the street, as soon as they were out of school, we picked them up at school and walked 1 minute to the house, right? So even when Amanda and when I came home from prison, I would drive 45 minutes and stay the night at Amanda's apartment. And then we would put the kids in the car and drive 45 minutes to my mother's house, and we would go back and forth. Like, create yourself a job where you can have your wife and kids. Amanda worked within my business. Even when Amanda and I were not together, my older son, Cody, his mother worked within my business. Like, it's all doable. Just build something that you want to do. And why can't they be a part of that? Why can't you do that out of your house?
Yeah. Yeah. Just one thing I will tell you, anybody that migrates to work from home, like
have to work.
it's not a valid childcare solution. And if your spouse doesn't work, then you have to get very clear about boundaries. Less so today because now I'm a podcast. I still have that discussion with my wife at times. But like when I was the regional sales manager and I was working out of the house, she would just walk in and just dump it. And I'm like, you can't do that. You know, I'm in the middle of actually doing something and I'm focused on it. And now you're breaking my focus. And like, we came to this agreement, like, if I was at an office 10 miles away, would you pick up the phone and call me for this? And if the answer is no, then, you know, and I thought this was funny. Hunter said, the wife doesn't like, could this be an email? Like, send me an email, send me a text. And then when I have the time to step away, I'll come talk to you. Because I wouldn't let somebody in my office that worked for me just storm into my office and interrupt me in the middle of budget planning. Like when I guess it depends on your mind, and maybe this doesn't affect everybody this way. If I'm writing the copy, I can't have that. I can't have someone stop me because I'm 4 paragraphs ahead in that copy. And if you hit me at that moment, it's like waking up from a dream. I knew exactly where it was going and now it's gone. So whatever works for you is fine, but you have to define some boundaries in a work from home situation.
And I think that boundary thing is really important, not just in a work from home situation, but even if you're at a job and wanting to hustle and add things on, is having the clear communication of when interruptions can happen and not. I've worked from home for a decade and a half at this point, and much more seriously in the last 3 to 5 years. And at this point, it has to be a real emergency for somebody to walk into my roasting shack and interrupt me while I'm roasting. Because if I don't get interrupted, that stuff gets done super efficiently. If I get interrupted, I screw up roasts and I get mad. And I used to, when I first did this, people would just like stop by at 11 o'clock on a Monday. And I'm like, nope, 11 o'clock on Monday is not when, unless you've made an appointment, that's not a good thing to do to me.
Sounds like an airsoft gun solution. Just
well, I mean, I have a redneck out in the yard now that keeps people from coming to the door. So that's great. But it's taken some real purposeful, like I'm focusing now. Okay, now I'm open for people. And that made a huge difference. The biggest way I see people fail when they're starting their first side hustle is that they don't invest their time with purpose on finding the work, on marketing themselves. And that means getting your cards out there, going out and meeting people, getting flyers out there if you're doing a handyman business, for example, or whatever that is. They don't spend the time trying to get the business. So then they're like, well, I'm just sitting around doing nothing, or I'm making my process better to more efficiently manufacture these cutting boards. Somebody was making cutting boards while they're listening to this. Well, I don't care how efficient. If you only have 3 orders for 3 cutting boards a week, your efficiency matters not. It matters not at all. And if you get orders for 150,000 cutting boards, you can pay people to figure out how to produce those, right? So, and that's, we say that all the time, but when you really internalize it, when you're ready to hustle, and if your hustle is Uber, then get out there and drive Uber and figure out what you can listen to make yourself better in between rides. How can you make yourself better? How can you learn more?
I never went to college. I effectively gave myself an MBA in the 90s when I was in sales and I was doing, late 90s, early 2000s, windshield time. I might spend 7 hours a day on the road, and there were no podcasts, and it wasn't free. And I would get audiobooks. I would go to like Half Price Books and buy audiobook sets on business and on how, business principles and marketing principles. And I'd listen to that shit. And since it cost me money, I didn't do what most people do with podcasts. You listen once, maybe you don't finish it, and then you go listen to something else. I would listen to that shit until I was about to wear that tape out. And then I'd package it back up, go right back in and exchange it and get something else. And so if you're doing anything where you got windshield time, if you are listening to your jams, right? And I like music and all, but if that's what you're doing, what are you doing? Like, you are wasting, like, the most powerful form of marketing and educational material on the planet is audio. Like, even though we're video here, nobody really needs to look at this. Like, Nicole will probably put this out as an audio format podcast. All you need to do is listen to it. And man, we're good, but there's other people that are good too. Get a diverse array of mindset into business. And if you're constantly pumping that shit into your head, just like your own self-programming, it won't go away. It starts eating at you. You believe you can do something, but you don't know what it is. But now you're on the quest to find it. And I know that sounds kind of like inspirational, motivational Tony Robbins shit or something, but it works. All I can tell you is that everybody I know that thinks like this, by the time they're in their 30s, is very financially stable. Right. And if they're not, it was something kicked them in the ass on the way, and they end up 10 years later ahead of where they probably would have been if they didn't get knocked off. I think John's a good example of that. John was doing well, had shit come into his life, but he's so far ahead now of where he was then, right? Because adversity in the right situation is like the best thing that can happen to you.
Had I added the Tony Robbins bullshit 20 years earlier,
yeah,
I'd be way ahead of where I am right now, though.
Yeah.
Like,
get up on stage and break that board, right? I mean, like, you know, and for some people that wouldn't mean anything, but I've actually seen stuff done like that where you take people that, like, they don't have a martial arts background or anything, they don't understand wood grain and shit, and you have them break a 3/4 inch piece of pine. And it was something they believed 5 minutes ago they couldn't do. And then they do it, and it like drops this wall of can't. I think maybe that's going to be an episode title someday, The Wall of Can't.
Yes,
because
next week.
That gave me goosebumps and shit, right? The Wall of Can't. That is just, I mean, I just noticed today, I didn't realize it had been this long, Nicole, but you had an episode that came out, 7 years of podcasting.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that you'd been podcasting for 7 years.
Yeah.
And when you start, I can tell you, my opinion is when you start and you do episode 1, the idea that you'll still be doing this in 7 years seems crazy. It seems crazy. Like, I'm going to do this until I find something with it or whatever. And then all of a sudden you've built an entire business model around it, and it becomes infinitely sustainable. Like, you can podcast forever if you want to. You're never going to run out of topics, and everything you do further monetizes the full system you've integrated together. You've worked with John. You've built Self-Reliance Expo, right, or festival. You've got your coffee business. You've got the direct business model of the podcast. And so now the game is really, how can I make sure the quality never goes down? And how many other income streams can I tie to this? Because I don't have an income stream. I have income streams. And Paul was just on here, Wheaton, and he said, passive income, is freedom. And he's right. But I think, how do you know you have passive income? Because maybe if you're always working hard, it doesn't look passive. But to me, if I go to bed and I wake up in the morning and I look at my income went up while I slept. The minute you're there, you're into passive income, because clearly I wasn't doing anything when that money came in, right? When I can take a vacation for 2 weeks, put up a discount code for a sale, and make more money in that 2 week period than the 2 week periods on either side of it while I'm fucking off on the beach, that's passive income. And so don't confuse passive income with not working.
No, because you had to work to put that together. And that's where I think people it's an unrealistic expectation. You're going to start a content business, not put any work in, and somehow magically have $100,000 a year in your first year. The people who do that put a lot of investment in, and they get it done, and they make it happen. And I think something as a content creator that happens is you start getting momentum, and you start developing a following, and then you're able to cross promote people and do them some good. And that's really cool. But then I see people like Evan from Radio Made Easy, who has built a lot in 6 months. And I think, what can I do that he's doing to continue building? Because I can learn from that. Yes. And that's the other part, is never stop being humble and realizing there's more for me to do. There's more for me to learn. I can be better at this. And look at the people who are doing something really well. And rather than must be nicing them, ask them how they did it.
Yeah. And especially the whole online thing, I would say federations over partnerships. Every partnership I've ever had has blown up in my face, bit me in the ass, and hurt me in my other businesses. Every single one of them. What we have together here really isn't a partnership, it's a federation. We get together, we do some things. But John's going to run SOE the way John's going to run out SOE no matter what we say on here, other than he might pick up an idea. right? But we all grow from the collaboration, but none of our success is dependent upon the collaboration, right? I would say it helps our success. None of our baseline success is dependent on this collaboration. And if this collaboration doesn't work out, it doesn't hurt Hollow Roast Coffee. It doesn't hurt Original SOE Gear, right? It doesn't hurt the Survival Podcast. The Federation eventually kind of meets its end. I don't see that happening anytime soon, but if it does, it's okay. And so federations have worked wonderful for me, right? And I guess you call a sponsorship a partnership, but it's a different kind of thing. I market your product for you. You pay me to do it. That's worked out well. Actual partnerships, me and this other person or this group of people are going to get together and do a thing.
Unloose the goose.
Yeah. That was okay because it was more a federation, right? And that was something that, like, I tried to lay out the vision in the beginning and go, look, I disclosed a lot of my income and this is what can be done. And the reach we have collectively is so much bigger, but it just wasn't important.
Yeah.
You know?
I actually talked about that yesterday. Was like, I loved Unloose the Goose. I learned a lot and made a lot of good relationships, but by the end of it, there were 2 or 3 people who were willing to show up. And unless you had that rotating show up, it wasn't going to keep going.
No, we charted top 50 second episode on the iTunes charts. That's just that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And we ended up in the top 30 for the category.
And we could have been number 1.
Then it just dwindled.
Yeah.
Then it just didn't. Well, we could have been number 1. Easy.
Yeah.
Easy. If the original group had stuck together, it doesn't work because in this case, I think it actually is more that everybody else had a business, and like TSP is always going to be more important to me than anything else I do. Right. That's just the nature of the beast. And I'll bring a lot to the table in a relationship like that. But if I don't feel it's being reciprocated, I don't have time. I'm not going to drag somebody. And I felt at some points like there were, not you, to be very clear, but there were people that we were dragging.
Yep. Okay. Ready for me to bring up some questions here?
Damn it.
And now for something completely different. Point me to the best design for a duck coop that is predator proof at night, possibly movable to keep near a spring free range. I want ducks for eggs and meat. Many thanks.
I use the Tough Shed. It's not movable.
Yeah.
It's 12 by 16. You could turn it into a tiny home. So it's pretty much a Taj Mahal for ducks, but I use that because it was there. And I would either self-build or kind of start there. If you wanted permanent location. I mean, the only thing they really need is the predator isn't able to get in, right? So you can either do that with electrocution or you can do that with a physical barrier or both. And I have found that using the coop is the best way to go. And it's hard to beat, I think you can get an 8x8 Tough Shed. Like a guy shows up and puts it together in 4 hours in your backyard for about $1,200. I think even today you can still do that. And that's, I don't know that you can self-build it for that, right? I mean, and those dudes, when they show up, like, by the way, that's another business. There's a whole business of just putting Tough Sheds together in people's backyards. And you'll never run out of work. And, like, when I had the little 8x8 one put in, like, the guy was supposed to be there at noon, and he didn't end up being there till 4. And I'm like, it's going to be a 2-day job. Bitch was gone at 6 o'clock, and it was done, and it was done right. Like, they get efficient at it. So that's where I would start. If you want it to move, then you need to put wheels on it. And you need to either be able to physically move it with your body or hook up like a lawn tractor or something and drag it. It's totally doable, but movable equals smaller. Unless you, like, John, you have that thing for the sheep that's like a giant corral that's caged. Like, that's expensive, though, to put some ducks in.
$2,000. And the aluminum TIG welded one I have for the birds was $3,000, and it's closer to $4,000, and they're selling them faster than they can build them.
Yeah.
But fences, guys, I know nobody wants to put in fences.
Fences are great.
If you fence your perimeter, you're only going to do it once. It's going to be there longer than you're going to be there. And with fences, you have dogs, and dogs keep all the predators out. And what's your predator load, right? Are we talking cougars, like mountain lions and bears? That's a different type of, predator load.
Yeah.
We don't have, hawks were coming down, eagles were coming down. My dogs get a hold of hawks. We have coyotes all outside of the perimeter.
Yeah.
There's not nothing eats anything inside the fence line.
Okay. I think that's spot on advice. On the duck thing, let's reformulate that just real quick. Like, this is what I would say. There's no need for your main flock of ducks to have a movable house. Screw that. Ducks have legs. Ducks are the animal that can swim, fly, and run, right? Ducks will move. Wherever you want your ducks to be that day, put their food there, and they'll go there, okay? So let's just go with a permanent housing, and I would do meat ducks in a tractor. And so you don't have to keep buying ducks to do that with, because ducklings are so expensive. You can't make money just doing it for yourself anymore. So you would pick a breed like Jumbo Pekin or something like that. And if you want a mixed flock, then just don't have any drakes of the off, and then just separate your girls for like a week to lay. Now you've got incubatable eggs that you know are true to type. So I've got my Pekin girls, and I only have Pekin drakes. Tractor the meat birds, because it's a 12-week process, and you're done. And that's so much easier than trying to move a coop. And then be careful. Are you really doing this for meat, eggs, both? Or why are you doing this? Like, you know, if you're just going to use cold ducks as meat, then just put in a coop and move their food around.
Yeah. So basically you got two options here, guys. The coop that Jack has where he trains his ducks to go to bed at night, or I don't think John closes his ducks in at night, but he has a perimeter fence, and he has dogs that will eat things. They will eat anything that should not be there.
Yes,
and both of those, how many ducks have either of you lost in the last year?
Oh man, we had 80 ducks just show up last year that they just disappeared and hatched. I've got 2 females on nests right now, so we'll probably get 20 out of that. We could totally lose stuff and not know it. We have ducks getting out of the fence line up on that key line, that ridgeline pond, and we see up around the blueberries. There's 72 blueberries up there, and I find duck nests in there, and something's sitting on some of them. I don't ever see them. But we've had a mangy, super old-looking fox show up, and I assume he's eating ducks outside that fence line. But
sure he is.
Eliminate that genetics out of there. If they're dumb enough to be outside, then that's what happens to them.
John uses the stun method.
Yeah, and there's a lot to be said for that. Like, your cost of production can go to almost zero on livestock. They will reproduce. They do it all by themselves if you let them. I've got a chicken explosion right now that I need to do something about. These Bantam chickens are retarded with their incubating, and they're hiding, right? They're going like into my wicking beds, and then all of a sudden, like, you go back to the coop and the rooster's up there, and he's got like 2 girls, and you're like, oh shit, because you know they're all on a nest, And once they've sat for a while, I'm not throwing away eggs that are like 90% torn.
Done.
I just feel like an asshole doing that. And I've got baby freaking Bantam chickens. It's like a swarm of these things out here. I guess the only upside of it is if I don't kill them, I'm okay with them going. And about a dozen at least this cycle have drowned themselves in the duck ponds. They go in the water and they can't get out. I feel bad for them. I'll save them if I can. As far as your question about losing ducks, I have one right now that I might lose, but has nothing to do with predation. My grandson found her yesterday. She was under our pool deck, and somehow she had like got her foot in the rocks, and she was laying on her back, and we have no idea how long she was there. She might make it. We don't know, but she was not good yesterday, and she's very immobile now. Like, her leg was in this weird position, and it wouldn't even come back in. But I've lost nothing to predators since earlier in the year where we had a bobcat show up for a while.
Yeah.
And I think that bobcat is smart and figured out that I had decided it had a beautiful pelt. And I was actually excited about the bobcat coming back. And as soon as I got it was like it knew, like it read the energy. Like, as soon as I was like, I'm going to shoot a bobcat. Never saw it.
I'm out.
Never saw it again, man. It was like either that or one of the neighbors popped it and just didn't say anything.
I've got some ducks I have 2 ducks like that got caught between 2 pieces of fencing. I don't have any clue how it even got in there. But it's like its foot was asleep. Its leg was asleep. Yeah. And those birds still to this day limp around like one of their legs doesn't work properly. I've got some ducks that are just so old. I'm like, when is this thing going to die? Yeah. Just every day it shows up and eats, and just it's super old, man.
Duck sausage.
I've got a chicken like that. She is 6 or 7 years old now, and I still get eggs from her like 2 or 3 a week, which is amazing. But last year she looked terrible and then disappeared, and I thought she was gone. And then she showed back up like 2 weeks later, looking great.
I have a Cornish cross rooster from last year And when we dressed out the last ones, they were 17 to 21 pounds when we gave them away to a lady that was using them for dog food. And this thing, I went out there and it was upside down. I'm like, oh, that rooster died finally. And he's on his back. And I went to pick him up. I just grabbed him by the legs. So I was going to throw him in the basket and feed him to the dog. And he was alive. He got so I'm like, oh, so I put him back on his back and he's kind of turtleback. He was stuck there.
He was like a turtle.
He's bigger than my 2 female turkeys right now.
I've seen that with ducks. I've never seen a chicken get stuck on its back, but I've seen ducks get stuck on their back. I saw a video, like a short the other day on YouTube. It was pretty funny. The baby duck that this little homestead chick had got stuck upside down, and the mother and the other babies ran into a little hidey hole. And when she went to turn the baby over, the mother came out and just started attacking the shit out of her. And then she had like a huge Chinese goose. Well, the Chinese goose came over to like attack the duck. Like it was protecting its owner, and she was petting the goose. I wish I would have like saved that one or something because it was freaking great little video. It was like 30 seconds.
My geese always break up anytime we've got guineas fighting or you've got a male duck jumping on a female or 3 male ducks jumping. The geese always get in there and break that up.
My dog does that with the Muscovies. The Muscovy drakes fight, and they just like normal drakes will fight a little bit, like the mallard breeds, but it's just a little bit. Like the Muscovies will go at it for like 15 minutes. And they look like they went through a plucker by the time it's over. Yep. So I've trained Charlie. As soon as he sees that, he just runs in there. Because if I break them up, they like run away and start their hash shit. And like 10 seconds later, they're at it again. When he goes and breaks it up, they're like, nope, I'm out.
Funny how that happens. Okay. Would you all trust properly pressure canned beef or chicken that is 3+ years old? I don't know what the plus. Does that mean it's 5 years old? Does that mean it's 10 years old? That means they don't know. It's at least 3 years old.
Would I trust it? Yes. Would I eat it? No.
Yeah, I might eat it. It depends on how it looks. So what happens with canned goods that are properly canned over time is the way they go bad isn't food rotting. It's just a degradation, it loses color and flavor. So does it still taste good? It's pressure canned. So you're going to want to boil that for 5 minutes on the way out of the jar to make sure that if anything did go wrong in canning, you break up any toxins that were in there. And that's the botulism toxin. But that I wouldn't worry about it. Like I'm still drinking apple cider that I canned in 2017 and it's fine. But your mouth will let you know if it doesn't taste good.
Your nose will let you know if it's
and it doesn't go off in that way usually.
Yeah.
And how many
I would feed it to the dog. I would boil it really good just to be safe and feed it to the dog.
So I don't even boil it. I don't cook anything. We don't boil it when it goes to the animals. It just goes to the animals. But the other question is, do you have a pantry with 8,000 jars in there and we're just testing this? Like if I have nothing else to eat, I'm eating it. Like I might eat a little bit of it and wait 2 hours, but do I have other stuff, right? Why are we having and I'm not saying don't have the conversation. I'm saying why, like more information. If I'm hungry and that's what I have, I'm going to eat it. Do I have other options? If I have a ton of stuff and I'm like, this is taking space, I have stuff to replace it, goes to the dogs. Or the chickens. My chickens eat tons of chicken. My dogs eat tons of chicken.
Anybody tells you chicken needs to be on a vegan diet doesn't know what a chicken is.
Nope.
They chase the cats away. Dorothy feeds the cats. She splits one cat food can a day in the morning for them. And the chickens chase away the cats to get the cat food.
Our chickens have come out of the fence. We've got 5 or 6 reds that end up on the front porch out here because that's where we leave the dry cat food.
Uh-huh.
So one by one, I chase them off. It's just gotten to the point where I've actually killed them one by one because they're eating more they're eating more rabbit, they're eating more of the cat food than the cats are eating. And now that it's like that chicken, man. Yeah, you can keep a chicken in a 10 by 10 pen, no problem, until it's experienced freedom. Once it knows it's there, you're never going to keep it in.
That's what Greg Judy says about his sheep. If a sheep jumps the fence, he immediately shoots it with a .30-06.
Yep.
Like because once it jumps, if you put it back in, it'll do it again, and then. The next time you come, there's 3, and then the next time you come, there's 7, and they educate each other on how to escape.
Yep.
So the intelligent convict is meat. Like that's the way he phrased it.
I can totally see why. John, is that this week's T-shirt?
This is this week's T-shirt. It says, "Be the reason somebody stops believing in government."
And where can they buy it?
SOEtacticalgear.com. We released them last night, so if you want one, as soon as you're off the live here, you better go grab it. Though we do 120 every Monday, and they sell out every day or two.
Yep. Tennessee Permaculture says my free range chickens inputs are cleaning up other animals' waste and spills.
Yep. Hey, what do people use lime for? Like in the chicken coop and such.
I don't know because I don't.
So I keep getting these targeted marketing ads. It's next Saturday lime or something, and this lady throwing it down. So I was wondering, like, I keep cement trays under my rabbits, and the flies are insane this year. These biting flies.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if I put lime in there, does the acidity of the lime kill out that larva and keep those from hatching? Because something in my head makes me think that's what they're alluding to. I could be completely wrong. And then if I do put lime in that manure, when I go to use it in 6 months to top dress raised beds, does that lime affect the growth of the plants in those raised beds?
So Gold Shop Barn says lime prevents insects and other pests. The other reason I've heard people using it in the deep litter situation is for smell. But I don't know about if you can use it on your gardens.
Yeah, that's my next question. I'll bet Sean knows.
I would try it. I mean, try it somewhere and see if it after it's composted, if it messes things up.
I mean, lime is used as a agricultural amendment to soil.
Mm-hmm.
But where are you at? What is your soil like? If you have alkaline soil, right, and you're moving toward the acid, that's good. If you're already fairly acidic and you're pushing more toward the acid. So I don't think lime would hurt per se individually, but it's going to alter pH in sufficient quantities.
Yeah, it's alkaline, not acidic. So
but this is what I was going to get to that Dave says here, biochar. Like if you're throwing biochar in those things, like I have this is the worst fly year I've ever seen in total flies. My coop, it hardly has any flies. There's more flies getting in the freaking house than are in the coop. And that's because every layer of deep litter I put down a 5-gallon bucket of biochar this year. And it doesn't stink. I'm not going to say it doesn't stink. It doesn't stink like it would normally stink in July. There's, it's not like you go in there and go, Febreze. But it's a much better experience. But I think the lime might be very effective. I'm seeing what ChatGPT says about it.
Yeah, so it's alkaline, so it raises the pH and makes it more basic. So if you have an acidic soil problem, I would think having that in there wouldn't be a big deal. But
yeah, I said that backwards, didn't I? Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. That happens to podcasters. We do that.
Yeah. But here's what GPT says: odor control, pest control, sanitation, moisture absorption, and pH balance.
I just put more litter in.
Yeah. That helps a lot.
So,
but like he's saying, he's got the tubs under the rabbits.
Yeah, Tennessee Permaculture. I'm all about the chickens under the rabbits, but I have my chickens specifically sequestered because the chickens will come in there, or the rabbits are sequestered because the chickens, if you want to destroy a nice groomed rabbit area, let a chicken in there. And they're eating up all the manure. I want the manure. And it's very nice up there where my rabbits are. I've got wood chips down. It's a 20 by 30 area. Chickens destroy that.
Yes, they do. But you know what would eat the hell out of those flies? It probably would eat some of the manure. But muscovies. Like you get a couple of muscovies in there, they're not going to fuck shit up. They need one little tub to take a bath in. And when the muscovies are in the coop and there are flies in the coop, it sounds like popcorn. They look so goofy and shit, but when like a fly comes by, they go ninja. They're like, gone. There was actually a study done where they put muscovies in dairy farms in Canada, and it reduced the flies by something like 92% because of two things. One, they went into the cow patties and ate the maggots out of the cow patty because they'll totally do it. A muscovy has no class when it comes to other animals' manure. They'll straight into it. But they also snap them out of the air. So it breaks the breeding cycle and reduces the adult population at the same time.
Yeah, they are insane this year. They're, even on the dogs, man.
It's weird to me that like this, there seems like there's a difference this year in a lot of things. Like you're telling me you have more flies than normal.
Yeah.
I have more flies than normal. We're 800 miles apart.
I have more flies than normal. And I ordered the stupid little window traps you talked about. Yeah, because you talked about them, you jerk. 2 weeks.
Yeah, it knocks them out. It's like one
2
of the
weeks till they
coolest
get
things
here.
in the world, man. They're these little paper stick-em traps. You put them in the corner of your window, and the fly goes in the window and starts going around the window. And then when he gets there's no bait or anything or poison. He just look like, well, what's in there? And they go in there and they find out glue. And the only time you really need to change them out is you get so many dead ones in there that like the new guy's walking on the body, so he doesn't stick anymore. That's when you pitch him. And that broke the cycle in the house. It's we're good. What I'm saying is like there's something weird, it seems like environmentally going on or something.
Yep.
Like, so you guys, we both have these flies. And then like you guys know I do a lot with aquatics, and so does our buddy David. And we both said our aquatic vegetation is not growing at the rate that it has in the past.
That's true. That's true here too.
That doesn't make any sense because it's obviously not needing to be irrigated. It's obviously not lacking nutrient. It's the same system it was always in. Your system, my system, and David's system are all different. Usually I have the one behind the duck coop specifically to grow food for the ducks. And usually by this time, I'm whipping out like 12 freaking pitchforks a day. And it's not even 100% covered yet.
I hear a ton of people in the raised bed groups saying the same thing. And you'll get a dude who's like, it's chemtrails, and then it'll turn into 100 people, it'll be, but I believe that there's something to the chemtrail thing. If you go out here and you look up, you don't ever see a clear sky anymore. You always see mist, and it's just kind of hazy out there. Like it's very, very rare that you ever see clear. See, even Amanda said chemtrails.
Yeah.
Like, if you go out there, you will see planes going in all different directions, and then you will see haze.
I think what hurts the argument that they're doing something is the complete nutters that think every airplane is making a chemtrail. Like, I promise you, they're doing something. Like you're saying, there is a haze to the air that's unusual. At the same time, I promise you the 737 taking your Aunt Edna to freaking Atlanta is not laying down a chemtrail on the way. A commercial American Airlines pilot is not part of a vast conspiracy that they've managed to keep secret. Like, I don't think, and the other thing is, I don't think you need the volume of aircraft to do this that's in people's minds, right? So all of a sudden, all the contrails are chemtrails and shit, but there's something not right. And I don't claim to know exactly what it is, but I think that this geoengineering bullshit, like if they talk about it, but say we might do it, then they're already doing it. And like instead of being like saying it's a conspiracy theory, just look historically. Everything that they were talking about doing someday in the past, if it was doable, like not flying cars or some shit, but if it was something that was doable, they were already doing it. When they were talking about stealth aircraft in the 70s, they were already building the F-117.
Type in, anybody who's hasn't seen this, just type in geoengineering or weather seeding or cloud seeding. Just type it into YouTube or Google Images, and you will see thousands of pictures, ground-based units in the United States, and you'll see these things in operation. The military has them. We've used them against other countries. We were doing it even in Vietnam, as early as Vietnam. China says that we are using weather manipulation weapons against them right now, currently.
It's possible. And do you even need to fly? If it's something that is lighter than air that'll go up, could you just emit it from somewhere?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't like to go too far down these paths, because what happens inevitably, and I think this hurts the entire inquisition of this stuff is, since you get to a point where you don't know an answer, all these people talking about it feel a need to complete the story, and they just generate an answer. And it makes me think of like when you play with some of the hacks you can do to fuck with AI with ChatGPT, they call it a hallucination. Like you can literally get it to say things that are completely ridiculous because it doesn't know the answer, but you've tricked it into believing it has to give an answer. And I think that's that's very interesting, because that's what the human mind does. Like if you ever read a story and it didn't really have a total conclusion at the end of the book, and then like if the author doesn't come out with another friggin' edition, you like start making up your own version of it. And I think that happens. But there is something it's too many people saying the same thing from too many different viewpoints. When you get all the people at the Flat Earth Convention saying that the Earth is flat, it does not impress me. But when you get a diverse array of people making a simple observation, everything seems different. That, I think, if you don't want to investigate that, you're not curious enough.
Well, something else that's a byproduct of this here is that it has been cooler than usual. for most. We've had some hot days, but it's been cooler than usual, which means my garden is doing great right now. And usually we're hitting like the July kill period right about now. And we're mid-July now. I've still got Brussels sprouts developing that have not been ruined. This has never happened to me this late in the year before. Yeah. I'm shocked. And my green beans are amazing. So, but the tomatoes are slow as can be. And I think that's the lack of heat and sun. They're just like, where is it? Like Tennessee's supposed to be banging right now.
It has been a good year though.
We put up shade cloth. We just put up 4x4 poles.
Yeah.
10 by 10, and then just use shade cloth. And that everything has started back up. Like we had a 105-degree day last week. We had a ton of 95s. I think we're supposed to be 95 today. So shade cloth. And then all my carts are those roller carts, so we can roll them around under shade. And that everything kind of took back off. But all my cool weather stuff, like we've got a few cabbages out there, but the cabbages didn't do awesome. The Brussels sprouts, the broccoli's not done awesome this year. Early this year it didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think about that
mine did, John. I've been like harvesting the broccoli cabbage stuff in the last 3 weeks, which is later than I've ever had it last. And
yeah.
And then I did use the bamboo vinegar, like the smoke thing, to keep the pests off them this year, Jack. And because those don't require pollination, it worked great. So I didn't have a cabbage worm problem, which is usually what happens to mine.
I need to do that myself right now. I need to get some liquid smoke on. Like my eggplant is getting hammered with aphids this year for some reason. You know.
Yeah, aphids are bad on stuff like that.
And then one of my strategies failed because I got lured into pretty. So one of the things I do is one part of my garden that gets no shade. I usually plant okra there. I don't really eat okra. Occasionally a little bit of it. But I plant the okra because it gets huge and it makes shade.
Yep.
Right. And it's 5 okra seeds and you get effect of a shade cloth. Well, I planted these pink ones from the Okinawan pink from Baker Creek because they looked cool on the book. Well, they only grow like this tall. So they're like the peppers and the okra are the same height. So like one of the things I always try to tell people about gardening and homesteading and all, don't ever think that somebody that's really successful with it doesn't have anything else left to learn. Like I learned that this year. I didn't know that. Now I know not if I'm doing it for shade, don't plant that shit. It doesn't get tall enough.
You could use sunflowers for that too, Jack.
Sunflower works. Yeah, I've done that.
Tennessee permaculture, man. If anybody knows how to get a hold of David Dubine at Adapt 2030, Nicole has reached out to him multiple times, and we've not gotten any line of communication with him.
Yeah, he messaged me once on LinkedIn and said email me, and I've emailed him a few times, but would love to have him out to Self-Reliance Festival.
Yeah, he's close here.
Yeah, it's totally if he has time that weekend. So I would say anybody reach out to him and say, hey, you want to speak at Self-Reliance Festival? Contact Nicole. You ready for some tough love, John?
What do we got?
How do you keep motivated when you're always feeling like you're being dragged down?
Motivation's not shit. You need discipline. The motivation is just to get you moving for a moment, right? How many times have you walked out of a Rocky movie or a Karate Kid movie and you're going to go take karate, and then you didn't take karate, right? That's motivation. You just have to do it. Like that's all there is to it. Turn this thing off and stand the fuck up and go do what you need to do. Like we know what we need to do. You just have to do it. The difference between you and me and every other human being on this program here right now is we all have 24 hours. You can't add any more to the day. There is only 24 hours. And the difference between anybody is what you choose to do with your 24 hours. What is it that you want to do that you're not doing? Maybe you don't want to do that. A lot of people do a lot of shit for the amount of money they've perceived, right? School, public school system, government school has conditioned kids that, if you want to make a lot of money, you have two choices. You're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer. Well, the truth is that you could make a whole lot more money being a plumber, right? You have calluses on your hands. But the question I ask people is, if you woke up in the morning and you had $100 million in the bank account, would you do the same thing tomorrow that you did today, right? Why are you doing those things? Most people pick a job that they think they can tolerate because it's going to make an amount of money that they think they want. And they've just said, okay, I'm happy with this amount of money. And a lot of that is based on the home that we grew up in, right? We knew what mom and dad made or what mom made. We know what the house looked like, and we have that idea of what that cost per year to maintain and have that house. Well, you're not in 20 years ago. You're not in 10 years ago, right? So you just have to, we look at, because we are programmed, right? And you're programmed by this. So be careful what you're consuming on this thing too. I talk about a lot about that. I don't know who asked that question, but I do a live a lot of mornings at 4:30 in the morning on Instagram. I talk about this a lot on our members' content on YouTube. There's a ton of it out there. You just have to find the person that you can tolerate listening to, and you just have to. Maybe you just don't want it, whatever it is you're talking about.
Yeah, the important way to build success in your life is to know when to push through that. You know, I got up Sunday, I had a sore throat, I had a tummy ache, I didn't feel like getting out of bed. I gave myself 5 minutes and then I got out of bed and I went on a walk. And while I was on that walk, I saw red clover and I thought, you know what, maybe I could make an herbal tea this morning to make myself feel better. And I picked some red clover. I got some echinacea because I thought maybe I'm coming down with something. I put chocolate mint in for flavor and I added, mullein. While I was up there, I grabbed mullein. So it's just some herbal tea. I made an herbal tea instead of coffee. And I had a great day. And I don't know if it was the tea or the fact I got out of bed, and I don't care which reason it is.
I was going to say, it doesn't matter if the herbs did anything directly. The action you took is more important than the herbs themselves.
Right. And I think that's the hard part. That's the biggest struggle I face is when I'm not motivated, how do I do it anyway? That's the thing I have to do. And I starred this, even though it's not all caps. Joshua says, cut the anchors that you feel are pulling you down. And that is the other side of it. If watching the news makes you frenetic and frantic and feel broken down and like society's collapsing, then cut that shit out. If there are people in your life that are doing that to you, cut that shit out. I don't care if you're related to them or not. Just, like, that's the best thing you can do is just cut that shit out.
Yeah.
So I didn't know how tough love John was going to go on that one.
Sleep after.
I've got thousands and thousands of hours of content about this out there. If they can't do it yet, they're not going to do it.
Yeah. How do you think is the best way to teach a good work ethic to kids?
Demonstrate it.
Yeah. Step 1, demonstrate. They emulate you. Step 2, give them shit to do. Step 3, make sure they do it. Step 4, when they try to avoid work, give them more work.
You're good at that with your grandson.
Right, that's just get more work. And I also like, there's the aggressive instruction, which is you're going to do this shit because I said so. But there's also like the grandfatherly side, and fathers need to learn how to do this too, because you'll be a grandfather one day if all goes well. And that is, then you explain why, but not when you're doing it. So it's like, go do your freaking job now. And then now you have more work because you tried not to do work. And then in like an hour or two later, when that's all done and the kid's happy, farting off, doing kid stuff, then you take them aside and say, the reason I'm doing this is because this is what life does. When you attempt to avoid work in life, you end up in the end having to do more work. That's how it always is. It's always harder when you attempt to avoid the work that needs doing. And what ends up happening is you end up working harder than you ever had to. And you still end up with less. So that's the other thing I did with my grandson, John, when he really was trying. I figured out, my wife figured out he was trying to get fired. He heard me talking about firing people so much. And since he didn't want a job, he figured if he screwed off enough, I would fire him. It's like, you'll never get fired. These are chores, not a job. So we do pay him. I cut his pay in half. I gave him more work for half pay. Because what happens to you in life, John?
Yeah.
When you are shitty at a job, you have to go get another job. And the person that hires you for the next job because you got fired from the last one wants a reference. So you have to take a shittier job because nobody wants to hire you because you just got fired. Yeah, like, I guarantee you in Camden, if somebody's like, they go looking for a job, go, where was your last job? SOE, John fired me. Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, I don't even want to talk to you.
We don't even hire people from Camden. No, it's not that it's from Camden. We don't have any local people. All of my dudes working here, currently they're all from California.
Huh.
And they work, right?
They do work. Yeah, you have to or you're not here.
Yeah.
It's within the Republic immigrant syndrome. people that pull up their lives and go somewhere are more likely to succeed than people who just get an opportunity right where they were grown, right? Like, Nicole, where are you from originally? Where'd you grow up?
Oregon.
Where do you live now?
Tennessee.
John, where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
Beaumont, Texas. Grew up in San Diego.
Where do you live now?
Yeah, Tennessee. It's that new. You want a new life? Go get a new life, right?
Well, I grew up in Pennsylvania and Florida, where I live now, Texas. Everybody I know with that level of success has some major point in their life, and sometimes it's just they moved, from Dallas to Fort Worth, but they picked up because what happens is, if you're hungry, your level of expectation for yourself is higher than it currently is. And if you stay where you are, you're surrounded by people who have the expectation that is the limiting expectation. It doesn't mean there's not good people there. Two people could cross streams, right? Like one goes from Texas to Beaumont, and one goes from Beaumont or from Tennessee to Beaumont and back, and they could both go to the same place. You could buy your old house and get the same effect. It's not the place you live. It's the association you have with the place and the people that is a limiting factor. And that's hard for people to accept it. Like, but I don't want to leave my home. Well, how much of that is nostalgia and love and concern, and how much of it's fear? Because I find a lot of it is fear. And the people I know that have succeeded the most have made some major decision to pull up and go do something somewhere else.
Well, it's starting fresh. I mean, what would you do if your house burnt down? If your house burnt down last night, you have no insurance, you have no means to replace any of it. You're not going to sit and wait for the insurance company. What would you do? And people's answers are different, but that's the thing. I mean, if you have all of those people around you that you just did nothing with, but you're still doing nothing with, when you move to a new place, you don't have all that negative influence. You don't have, like, I don't get people with get married and have children and have problems with the in-laws. Our in-laws don't fucking come here. Like, it's not an option. Like, even my mother was like, when are you going to come back and visit me in California? Mom, I'm never coming. Never. I'll move you here. I'll fly you here. I'll drive you here. Whatever you want to do, I'll build a place here for you. I will buy you a house. I'm never coming back to California. Never.
Yeah, I think when people feel like they can barely make ends meet and are living in a market that is super expensive and high tax, that was probably the real first step I took on changing things, was my $4,000 a year raise when I moved to Tennessee in less taxes. That was it. And it was a no-brainer. Like, once I was here, I thought I can deal with the humidity because $4,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it just went from there.
Yeah,
and
my money doubled when we left California.
Yeah.
I could see that, definitely.
And now it's 10 times worse now. It's insane what's going on.
I don't know anyone who lives there. I mean, the weather's beautiful, the geography is beautiful, but it can't overcome the problem.
No. It may someday melt down. At Crazy Pollock, I'm building 6 cutting boards as John is talking. I hope that's the Crazy Pollock from Tennessee Butcher Blocks. I think we both know that person, if that's who it is. Let's see. Paul Wheaton says, all my stuff has a 50% affiliate fee for anybody that wants to take a stab at building income streams. Here's something, Jack, that somebody else brought up to me last week or 2 weeks ago. And it was like a federation of affiliate links for content creators for our network would be really cool, where you can self-generate and we're all giving each other cross-promotional kickbacks. I thought that was a neat idea.
Doing, except he's the clearinghouse for it all. But like, anybody can sell anything on Paul's stuff, I think, as long as it's good.
He doesn't take 50% from you if you list it on his place. But like, imagine, so like for Self-Reliance Festival, there's a commission you get.
Yeah.
And I give you an affiliate link. And it's not a huge commission because I've kept those ticket prices down.
Yeah.
That may have to change next year.
Well, and you're selling a physical product with a fixed cost of, per attendee.
Yeah.
Like, I can't give you 50%. Like, if I was going to do it, I won't, because I sell out anyway. But if I was going to sell tickets for my workshop
for 50%,
I can't give a 50% commission because I have I'm in the red. But if I was selling virtual access,
yes,
that's an unlimited thing. I can sell as many of those as I can sell. and it's a very low cost per user, and I could give a very high commission on that.
Yes. And that's something I've just been thinking more and more about, because, people are like, hey, could I get an affiliate link to sell? And I'm like, this is not like I need to give you permission. Yes. Because you're going to sell 10 more than I would have sold. So go send 10 more than I would have sold. That it's a win-win. You get a little bit of money. I get a commission, or I get the thing sold. So anyway,
you have to be careful of, though, when you have so much community, is cannibalization, where people are using other people's affiliate links just to do it, where you would have had the business anyway.
Yes.
Because that hurts. And I know everybody just thinks, I'm just participating too, but no, you're not. No, you're not. Like, we're all small business people. That's something to always be aware of. Like, and
you also need to look at their stuff too. Like, check their social media.
Yeah.
That guy might be a complete asshole, and he might be saying a bunch of shit that does not align with your brand. You can hurt your brand by you need to have some oversight on some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Lime water for storing eggs? ? That's a question. Sure.
It works.
Sure.
It works.
I make so many eggs that I don't need to store fresh eggs. There's not a day out of the year where I can't pull dozens, on the worst day, dozens of fresh eggs. And then we also have freeze-dried eggs. I mean, I have so many eggs. There's days I don't even bring eggs in here. I literally put a little kibble. The only time I feed my dogs dog food is so that, because they'll eat eggs, but if I put it over dog food, they'll eat way more eggs.
Yeah. Jack and I were having a story. Oh, go ahead, Jack.
No, just thank you. And I wanted to say I agree. Nicole's looking freaking badass in the middle of her 75 hard.
7 more days.
And I will take any compliment I can get at my age. So
yeah. It made a huge difference for me physically, but that wasn't my goal. But you guys already know that story. So,
well, it's part of what you were saying about earlier. You look at people and say, well, how can I do more? And so that's why you did 75 hard. It was more about the mental and spiritual thing to it. Like, how can I be more effective at what I do?
But now I'm physically more effective too. And that really helps me a lot. So that's the other thing, is I'm not.
I've had people, when I talk to them about getting their body in shape, say, well, they have like mental things they're processing. Some are like vets and stuff like that. And like, when I get my mind right, then I'll be able to get my body right. No. As long as you keep poisoning yourself, and as long as you basically continue to do what you're doing, which is using food as a drug, food as a medication, as a comfort, you'll never get your mind right, because you're not forcing your mind to be right. I'm miserable, so I'm going to eat. I'm happy, so I'm going to eat. There's a big part of what led me down the wrong path of nutrition. I knew not to do that shit. I knew what to do. But I grew up in a family that was pretty poor, and food was the thing. Like, there was Sunday dinner with grandma every Sunday, and you better be there. And when something good happened, you had food. And when something bad happened, you had food. And so food became a comfort. And it is a drug. It's an absolute drug. People are eating way more food than they need or even want. And since it's empty calories, they're able to eat it. Like, I was shocked when I changed my diet. If I sat down with, before that, let's say 12-ounce ribeye, a big ass baked potato, and a big pile of vegetables, I'd eat every freaking thing on that plate. And then, you switch and you're eating just the steak and maybe a little bit of greens or something. And you're ending up like looking at the last little piece of meat and going, here, Charlie.
Yeah.
Right. Which is crazy, because you're eating so much more food before, and we've all had that experience too, like where you eat a huge meal at a restaurant with some friends and shit. And it was great. And they're like, you want any more? Nah. And the waiter comes by. Would you like to see our cheesecake?
Cheesecake is my crack.
Cheesecake. Right. I couldn't eat another bite, but now I can eat cheesecake, because we're hardwired biologically that when that comes in, we're going to eat it, because in nature, it's so scarce. Like, that's the big windfall of like rotted apples and figs that come right before winter. That's what that is. And it's so rare in nature that there's a biological trigger, a survival instinct, but now it's available 24/7. They'll ship it to your house. And it's very dangerous health-wise. Like, so get your health together, man. That's something we didn't really talk about today, but you can get everybody in this window here. There's a commitment You know, I would say John's is probably higher than mine. I'm not up pounding iron at 3 a.m. every morning or anything, but like there's a commitment to physical health that goes along with being able to do all this shit we're talking about.
Yeah. The mental thing, just to underline that, I have in the last 3 weeks had more personal things happen that are sad and mentally taxing than probably any other time in my life. And I've gone through some shit in my life, and I was much more able to handle it just because of the physical foundation. So that's you know, if you're listening to this feeling sad, like, go for a walk. That's all I got.
Yeah.
Next topic.
A long walk.
Stop saying it. John's like, Nicole, you said that 90 times in the last 2 months.
The walk doesn't do shit. It's the strenuous exercise. And I mean, for every one person that says something, there'll be 20 people that counter that. But yeah, you can go for a long ass hour-long walk if you want to, or you can bust your ass for 5 minutes. You're going to accomplish more in the 5 minutes physically than you are the slow, meandering, peaceful walk. You just have to decide what you want. I want the other 55 minutes to do shit with.
I was gonna say, give me 20 minutes on and off with a heavy bag, and let me put together a routine for you. And in 20 minutes, you'll feel like your body's gonna fall apart. Yeah. In 20 minutes, like, you know, if you go at it, if you give, like, because a heavy bag is not like a weight. Like a weight, if you're gonna push 200 pounds, you're gonna push 200 pounds. You don't have a choice. You either push it or you don't. A heavy bag, you have to apply the effort. But like that's that I've been on lately is a heavy bag, and I got to get up early to do that because it's freaking 10,000 degrees in the garage where I have it, and I don't have a place in my house that makes sense.
Go grab sandbags and carry them around without handles, just by the edge. Have them unloaded enough you can grab them. Walk around with 5-10 pound weights, wheelbarrow, just functional fitness stuff even.
Well, herking wood chips actually will get your heart rate up and down these hills.
Yeah, go split wood. Go cut down trees. I mean, there's tons of shit, and there's not a damn thing in this gym right here that will help you split wood or cut down trees or use a wheelbarrow.
Yep. But you've got the gym, which is really nice too. Like I'm really thankful I had a Concept 2 rower here the last. Yeah, it's like it's right there outside my front door.
Yeah, I hit the rower yesterday morning. I got up at 2:30, and at 4:30 I did the treadmill, did the rower, and then worked out.
Body weight.
That's John's every day, guys. That's John's every day.
Not every day.
When I was deployed to
almost every day.
We weren't really doing the level of workouts that we were accustomed to in the Army, and we were doing very short PT time, long days on the road and stuff like that. And myself and one of my buddies that were deployed together, we didn't go work on the road with construction. We're mechanics. So it's hard work, but it's not physically enduring work. So we built our own shit. We just took a scrap wood. We made a set of dip bars, and we made a set of pull-up bars. And that weight training, like we had this dude that was in an MP company that was deployed with us, and he was stacked, man. He looked like, you know, bodybuilder type. And he came over. We built weights out of, like, we took a welder or a torch and we cut our own steel plates and shit. We welded big lug nuts on a bar to make a bar with collars. We built out of plywood a bench that did flats, inclines, and declines. And he came and he worked out with us, and like he put us to shame. But then when he thought done, we went and we would do like sets of dips and pull-ups and chin-ups. He freaking collapsed. He was way stronger than this, but he could not keep up with that level of functional fitness where you're doing load bearing of your own body weight. Yep. That's like a huge thing that you can do, and it's free. Go find a tree.
There's not an instant endorphin release. Like, people like to buy things on Amazon in the middle of the night because they feel like they've accomplished something when they've added another thing to the shelf. But fitness can be free. Fitness, you just have to do it, but it requires physical exertion. And somebody said, walk can be a perfectly good workout. For you, maybe it can. For me, it's not at all. Like, I'm not. Go walk a walk every day and do the same walk every day of the year and keep a track of, take a photo of yourself every week. You won't change. If you need that mentally, if you're beginning the journey and a walk is what you can do, but you have to increase it every time. It has to get a little more difficult. Like when you go to the gym and you're super sore, and then you go to the gym for 6 months and you're not sore, you're not gaining anything.
Yeah.
And there'll be 20 people to contradict that, but I can tell you what I do, and I can tell you what people that I've paid a fucking ton of money that are, professional trainers, what they do. And there's somebody that if you don't like what the top guys are telling you, you can always find somebody that will take your money to tell you something that you are comfortable with.
I also say it depends on where you're walking.
Yes,
like here, if I take a walk here, there's no physical exertion at all. It's flat.
Yep.
And I walk here all the time. I think it's good for you mentally, and I think there's some physical benefit. But like when I lived in Arkansas, if I walked up to see my neighbors, that was a friggin' workout. I mean, there was a part of that. There was a good 3/4 mile piece of that road that you almost felt like when you were walking and leaning into it because you had to, you could almost reach straight in front of you and touch the freaking road.
Yeah,
that's a different thing. Like where Nicole lives, I know she's been at your place. I don't know if you've been there. There's no flat.
Yeah,
there's no flat. The sheep pasture is yeah. It's great. You got to walk up there and run fence around the paddock, and people see this nice flat paddock in their mind. No, it's like up and down and up and down. It's a lot. It's it's not bad. It's actually a great way to maintain a hillside is to have grazers on there.
Yeah. You'll see a lot of people interact when you're having a conversation. They'll get in about and tell you how to work out and what they're doing. But when you see them in real life, they don't look like they work out at all, which means it's because they're not. They don't work out. But like Porterhouse there, like that dude was here while we were getting ready to go eat. And that motherfucker was up top there sweating all over my treadmill, like making shit fall off my ceiling. Like that dude, like when a dude shows up at SRF and is like, hey, I got to go run for 4 hours, like him and Empty Knives and those guys. I'm like, yeah, you go. You log 2 miles for me.
Yep. Okay. Is there a certain goose you need for protection? An armed goose.
Well, this is what I'll tell you. There's 2 types of gooses, assholes and not assholes. And you're making a choice. And so the only non-asshole geese I've ever owned are pilgrim geese. And they're the chillest geese. They don't even go after strangers, right? They will get really pissed off if they think something's dangerous to the flock, like they see a bad bird or something. But they're chill as shit. They're like a giant duck. Every other goose is an asshole. And so you have to look at it like buying a breed of dog, like let's say a Malinois. Malinois is a great dog. I own one, got it from Joel. But it requires work to make the dog not an asshole to you and to your family, and then let it be an asshole wherever else it needs to be. Like the Chinese geese, the Africans, whatever, they're asshole geese. But if you don't want them being assholes to you, you need to raise them from goslings like you're raising a kitten. And if you don't, they will not differentiate between you. Now, what I will tell you is geese learn quickly. They're very intelligent birds. And if you have an asshole goose, this won't make them like cuddly or anything or friendly like you want them to be. But it will prevent them from attacking you. Get down on one knee and let the goose come. Understand, it's a goose, right? For all the mythology, it's a goose. It's not a very big animal. It has a head that's smaller than a tennis ball. It will stick its head out and it will come try to bite you. And you smack it. And you just sit there, and every time it sticks its head in, you're like, smack, smack, smack. It takes about 10 times, and that goose is like, wrong dude. Yep. Never going to do this again. And like we had the Toulouse, we called them the Barnyard Mafia. My wife wouldn't do it, and they never stopped harassing her. But one day I was out in the far pasture, and I hear her yell, and then it quiet. So I'm like, what the hell happened? So I go over, and there's like a giant freaking Costco thing of toilet paper laying on the ground. The hatch is up on the forerunner, and no one's there. No geese, no wife. And I'm like, I know what happened. And so I go in. I'm like, she goes, let me tell you what happened. I said, no, let me tell you what happened. You got home. You opened up the hatch. You pulled out the toilet paper. The geese attacked you. You threw it at them and ran in the house. She goes, how did you know that? Did you see it? I'm like, no, I observed the evidence. So if you want geese, you either have to be really kind of paternal with them as goslings, or you got to be an asshole back to them. Unless you want just happy geese, then get the pilgrim geese. The pilgrim geese are just awesome birds.
We have 2 geese, and they're in with the duck in the bigger area with the ducks. I heard Salatin say if you want a goose to guard, you need 1. Because if you have 2, then they want to do goose things. It's just like having puppies. You bring in 2 puppies want to do puppy things, but if you bring in 1 puppy 6 months apart, then the others will kind of teach it. I have a gray one and a white one. That's the kind of goose I have. I don't know what it is, but they're very loud. You can hear at night when something is happening up there, like maybe a possum comes around or something. I don't think there's a possum, but if something is happening, the geese are on it. And if you see, a lot of times there'll be multiple males trying to jump on a female duck, and the geese are on that and making a commotion also.
Yeah, even the pilgrims do that.
But as far as like I had a rooster, I always hear people like, the rooster flogged me. I'm like, I don't know. Why don't you just kick that rooster so hard you're trying to like have its soul come out of its body? And
because it'll die.
No, it won't, because I had a rooster run up, and I think I had pants on, and I literally tried to kill it. It was wobbling around. I'm like, that's what you get. And now he doesn't ever do that anymore. Like,
you know what actually works with roosters, though? Roosters attack humans because they're delusional, right? If you notice, like, the rooster never attacks your dog.
Correct.
It attacks people. It attacks people because people interact with the flock. And you know what it says? That fucker with that beard, that's a big fucking rooster. I'm going to kick his ass because this is my flock. What a rooster will never do. You watch your roosters, you'll see that, like, the roosters will find a really choice thing to eat. They don't eat it. They call the hens over and they feed the hen. And they offer the hens the food. When a rooster's aggressive to you, put food in your hand and give it to the rooster. You'll break his delusion. Because no rooster would ever offer food to another rooster. Now, I have a shorter solution is if you spur me, you go in the tree and you die. That's like, I just cure that problem. But I have no problems with my roosters at all. I had one. Remember Billy Roy, Nicole?
Oh, yeah, Billy Roy.
Right? He was spurring everybody.
And he was like this big.
Yeah, little bitty,
tiny little dude,
flash blue bantam game hen or gamecock, and I finally got tired of him. My wife's like, "He's so cool and all." Like, so I killed him, and like a week later, she goes, "It's so peaceful."
Yeah, I could not listen to your porch videos because of that damn rooster. Yeah, I tried to, and I come back in a few weeks. And I'm like, nope, there's that rooster again. Yeah,
you come back a couple more weeks, and there's no rooster.
Yes.
He was delicious. We made coca vin. It was a homeschool project. He went in the crock pot.
The crock pot's a really good tool for keeping you true to your nutritional goals and saves time. It's a really good tool.
I think we got one more. No, are we caught up?
We're caught up, and we're horning in on Jack needs to turn into a princess hour. And so let's go once around the horn. Why don't you start, John?
SOE Tactical Gear is the name of my website. We do gear and shirts. I do a live video every night on this YouTube channel at 9 o'clock. You can come on. We talk about whatever you want to talk about. In the very beginning of the video, we show all the gear that was made each day. I've got a membership on my YouTube. We have, we do dozens of videos in the membership area each week. And I've got over 4,000 real videos on YouTube here. So I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, MeWe. I'm everywhere. If you want to have a conversation somewhere, we're there.
Jack.
I am Jack Spirko, host of The Survival Podcast. You can find it at thesurvivalpodcast.com. We've been producing 5 podcasts a week, most weeks since 2008. We're turning 15. In fact, we did turn 15 last month. We're having the official celebration the 20th of this month. So we've been around a while. We've got over 3,300 episodes. And if there's something in self-sufficiency, self-reliance, independence, liberty, homesteading, permaculture, all that stuff that you're interested in, we've probably done something with it. You can just go to the site and use the search bar. And if you're too freaking lazy to type all those letters for the survivalpodcast.com, you can just go to tspc.co because we'll even let lazy people listen.
Such a kind dude. Okay. I think that if you want to build community, which is necessary for building resilience, you need to meet people in person. John and I do an event called the Self-Reliance Festival. Jack, have you spoken at the Self-Reliance Festival?
I believe I have. Time or two.
Is it a badass event?
It is a badass event, and you should totally go.
You should totally go. October 14th and 15th in Camden, Tennessee. John hosts it at his compounds at Special Operations Equipment. And we've got a lot of really cool stuff lining up for this time. We're going to have a lot more hands-on demonstrations of heritage skills like spinning, because that's on the top of my mind this week. And so things like that. We will have blacksmithing, so there'll be dude things too. But we have presentations from all sorts of folks. We're going to process animals. We're going to process 2 kinds of animals. We're either doing a pig or lamb contest during the event between 2 butchers. So it's like a butcher off to see who can do it fastest. Butcher off. And then I'm pretty sure that's going to be cooked and served. And then we have a chicken processing workshop that's going to be kicked off with a demonstration from Joel Salatin himself. It's a really awesome event. And of course, the number 1 reason to go is the conversations you will have there that can help you bust through any mindset issues you have and help you figure out what your next step is and increase resilience in your life. Tickets are $75 at selfreliancefestival.com. Grab them before the price goes up on August 1st. We'll see you next